Hi everyone, Annie here from Stamp Anniething, and thanks for joining me. We're going to make this adorable three-dimensional Egypt I Spinx I Love You slimline card with lots of dimension. So we're going to get started and we're going to begin coloring our cute little pharaoh. This adorable stamp is available on our website, and we're going to begin with our 𝐒𝐬𝐴, and we're just going to quickly put in our darkest areas on our legs, arm, and neck. We always do our body first, so that is our 𝐒𝐬𝐴. And I am just laying down where I think the shadows are going to hit on him, and also do little indents on his knees. And that is how we're going to begin. Then we're going to go in with our 𝐒11, and basically you go over the exact lines that we already laid down with our 𝐒04, just to start getting the paper wet and to start getting the blends to blend out. So that is our 𝐒11, 𝐒11. And next we're going to go in with our 𝐒21. And again, repeating the same process. We are going over our previously drawn in marker lines and just continuing to expand a little bit with each layer to fill in those areas. Now we'll take our 𝐒00. Again, just repeating that process once again. And then our final color layer in our skin is our 𝐒𝐿𝐿. So you're just building up the layers with a shadow on one side, and then you're layering it out and blending it out to your lighter color. And that's all that you're doing. We always do 2 layers on our coloring because it's just the paper is then getting saturated with your ink. So then your second layer is going to go much more smoother, and your blend will be smoother and your colors more vibrant. So we're back with that 𝐒04. Second layer always goes quicker than your first layer because you already know where your colors are laid, because you're just following what you already did. There's our 𝐒21. I'm sorry, our 𝐒11, 𝐒11. Going over that 𝐒04 and just again extending it out a little bit. And this is all just very, very repetitive when we do our coloring. Now we have our 𝐒21. Again, just going over what we already have. On little areas like this, you might not notice doing a second layer that the blend is smoother. But when you're doing an area like the hair and the face, you definitely notice the smoother blends. Smaller areas doesn't require as much, but the larger areas, you definitely notice it. Here we are with our 𝐒00. And now finally, grabbing our last layer for this is our 𝐒𝐿𝐿. And there you have the body skin of your cute little pharaoh. And now we're going to use the same markers, and we're going to go ahead and do his ears and his face. The ears are very small, so you're going to just do little lines for that shadowing. And then for his face, we're going to go underneath his headdress, all the way across on that forehead area. And then we're going to go down right on the side like that. And now we're going to take our 𝐒11 and going over those lines. And since your 𝐒04 is your darkest color, you always want to go over all of the layers with each time you add in a new marker, so you're blending all of them out, not just the last color you put down. Now our 𝐒21. Again, going over the previous 2 layers and extending it out. And then I'm going to go down the sides of his face with my 𝐒21, and I like to connect it to where the side of his eye is drawn in with the black line from the stamp. Now my 𝐒00, going over those previously drawn layers, and now I am just going over and I'm making the circle around his eye, so I can leave that white area. And now I'm doing the same thing on the other eye. Like so. And now I'll go ahead and I'll blend out the part near his forehead. And now my 𝐒00. The ears at this point are almost completely done. And then we're going to go ahead and feather out more on the face. And if you are coloring along or doing this later while watching this video, you will see that the skin is a little blotchy, and that's because it's your first layer. And now we're going to go right back in again. And now your paper is going to be completely saturated on that skin. So all of these layers are just going to blend more beautifully because now that whole face has been covered with the ink. Now our 𝐒11. Again, just repeating what we've already done, but making sure you go over all the previous layers to get those blends to really work. And now my 𝐒21. Again, all the way down the side, connecting that skin gap to where the eye is drawn. And then going over the previous layers across his face, like so. Then my 𝐒00. And again, blending it out, going around the eye, leaving that white area for him. And then going across his face, again, just smoothing it out for that better blend. And now I'm going to be taking my R21, and I'm just adding a little bit of pink tint to his cheek areas. Just to give him some color. And then I'm on with my 𝐒00, and I'm just fanning out the end of the cheeks, not going over the whole pink because it'll dull it. I'm just trying to fan out the edges and connecting the chin area. And then with my 𝐒𝐿𝐴, filling in the rest of that face. And you can see the blend is a lot more smooth because we've done that second layer. And there is the skin on our pharaoh. Okay, so now we're going to start in on doing his headdress. And we want thin little lines like so, as opposed to fatter ones. So by holding your marker at a 90-degree angle, you really get that thinner line. And we are using our BGs, and this is BG 18. And I'm doing every other section on the headdress. And I'm just going as close to the drawn line as I can possibly go. And on the left side of the headdress center, I am going on the left-hand side, and then on the right side of the center of the headdress, I'm going on the right-hand side. And now again, still at that 90-degree angle with our marker as much as we can to keep these lines thin. We are going over what we previously drew and extending it out just a little bit more, because we do want a nice little variation and color hitting in our headdress. Now our BG 13, we're going in again. And we're just extending a little bit further, starting to really get the area filled up on these stripes a little bit. Like so. And then our BG 11. And we are just getting that nice light to dark highlighting area in each of our stripes. So we're just now filling in the rest of that stripe, making sure the blend with this BG 11 to those other colors layered is nice and smooth. And you can see a gradient from that darker side going into the lighter side of these stripes. It gives it a nice variation in the coloring. So it's just not flat with these teal stripes. And because we're also going to add other color into the opposite stripes, we're going to make it read white and teal. Okay, so that is our stripes on the across this headdress. And we're going in for our second layer. Again, it's all very repetitive, but if you want nice, smooth marker lines and not harsh ones, it's really important to take these steps, because like I said, the first layer is saturating your area completely with the ink so that the second layer goes down much smoother. So we're just repeating the process, doing those stripes. So again, just a lot of repetitiveness, but that second layer will always go quicker than your first because you already laid down and mapped out where everything is going. So you don't have to think as much on that second layer of where you want your dark and light to go. But that second layer also gives you the opportunity to fix your dark and light if you need to. When you pull back and look at your coloring, if you need to add more dark into areas. And now we're just finishing up these stripes across the front of the headdress. Again, just working out that blend. Making sure it's nice and smooth from those darker areas going into the light. And you can see in the second layer that the colors are more vibrant than they were on that first go around. Just finishing this last stripe, and then we'll begin our side stripes. And the same markers, same technique, every other stripe. We are just going to hit the bottoms this time of every other stripe. So now we'll have shading going from the bottom to the top, whereas on the top of the headdress, it was going from the sides towards the center, and it just adds a nice visual appeal when your highlights and your hits on your coloring comes in from different ways. So we're just doing the exact same process with the exact same markers on these side little stripes. And blending it out to that lightest color. And getting these last ones on the side done. And so you can see how the shift of the highlight and the shading has rotated from the front headdress to the side. And now we're just putting in that second layer. Again, it's all just very, very repetitive in your coloring. And that is all Copic markers is. It's just putting down layers, extending it out, and repeating. And it's the same if you're doing skin, clothing, or hair. It's just a lot of repetitive business over and over again, which might seem, mundane at the time, but the overall effect when you're done is just really, really nice. Now we're going to repeat it to our other side. You want to make sure we get the same stripes on the other side. So I'm just making sure I'm matching up my stripes. So I know which ones to color. And that's, yes, okay, we're just making sure we match them up. There we go. And then we're going to go ahead, put down our next color. And then our third color is now going down. And now we will finish it with our final color for this first layer. Just going over those past layers to blend out to this lighter one, making the transition as smooth as I can. And now going really quickly, we're going to do our second layer on the second side. Again, the more you hold your marker perpendicular to your paper, the thinner a line you can get. And in some areas, especially with those darker colors, you just need a really, really thin line just to hint at that shadow, especially in small areas. On clothing, your darkest color you might have as a thicker line because you have more area to shade, especially also in hair. But on these little areas, just a thin, thin line really does wonders just to take it up that notch that there's great shading in a small area. And now our final color on our final layer, just trying to get as smooth as that blend as you can, going over all the previous marker parts that you've already laid down, blending it in. And there we have all the stripes on his headdress. And now we're going to do the stripe going around the back side of the headdress. And we're just going to pull in from the tops with our darkest color. And we're going to repeat it on the other side. And then we're also going to lay our darkest color coming from the area from behind his body, going around. And then we're going to extend this color with our next layer So going over everything, as you can see, and then just pulling it down a little bit further. And that's all you need to do. Go over your previous layer and just pull it out a little bit further along. And now our next color, same thing, going over it, pulling it down to where there's a small area of the white in between, which we will reserve for that last color, for that little bit of a highlight. And now that final color, just bridging it all together and blending it out. And then we're just going to repeat it really quick. So that darkest area underneath the corners, then the areas from coming out from behind his body, our next color going over the previous, extending it a little bit further. And again, you've already mapped this out, so you know where to add your colors. And just repeating the process all over one more time. And our final layer, once again, bridging everything together. And now we have the trim on his headdress done. And now we want to go in and add, since we've got these markers out, a little bit of the detail for his clothing. I'm skipping the darkest color because there's such skinny lines. I'm just trying to hit a little bit of area on the tie around his waist, just so it ties in with the headdress without using all of those marker colors because it's such a small area. So now we're going to go in and we have to do the other set of stripes, which we want to read white. And to do that, we're going to use our cold grays, our cool grays. And I'm just going down with my C2. It's probably not going to read very well on camera, but this is your darkest shadow area. So I'm just laying down that line, and then I'm just going to be feathering it out with a lighter color for those cool grays. So it'll still read as white. And it was a little too light, so I'm going back in with my C3 as my darkest color, just so you can get a little bit of a shadow going. So that was my C3. Then I'm going in with my C00 and just blending that out. When you want something to read as white, you still need to add in shaded areas and then blend it into the white of your paper. This is a very, very small area, so I don't really get to blend into a ton of white here. So I'm just using the two colors of C3 and my 𝐂𝐸𝐧𝐧𝐞 just to give the illusion of white stripes, but by adding this C3, it's darkening the edges. And then blending it out smooth to a lighter color. So it still has that variation of going from dark to light. And even with it being in a very small area, it will read as white when you're all done. I also like to color white with my baby blues, my really, really light blues, just to add shading with that. And then sometimes I use the grays. Again, it's just to give a hint of color to add for the depth of what shadows would be in white without coloring in all of the area. And so we're just repeating. Same thing like we did on our teal, but just with 2 markers. And blending it out into your white of your paper. And these again are such small areas, it's going to hit the whole thing. Just finishing up the second layer with our dark C3, and then pulling in the 𝐂𝐸𝐧𝐧𝐞, smoothing it out. And again, you can't really see it as well on camera. It's just to give that little bit of a hint of color on these other stripes. Now we're going to go and quickly do our other side, repeating those stripes. So just adding at a 90-degree angle that really thin line at the bottom of all of our stripes. And then blending it out with the 𝐂𝐸𝐧𝐴. Just really working to get that C3 and 𝐂𝐸𝐧𝐴 to blend together. And then that second layer. And then we're nearly done with all these stripes. And now our final layer with our marker. And then the top of the headdress will be finished. With all of these shaded stripes going vertical and horizontal. There we go. Now we're going to take that C3 again, and we're just going to pull down some shadow areas underneath his neck, his chin face area, and that side of the headdress, and just start pulling it down. Just feathering it down towards the bottom. Again, that's with your C3. And then we're going to take our 𝐂𝐳𝐧𝐴 and blend it out, going over that C3 and then just blending it out into the white area all the way down. Because it's a larger area, I'm able to use my chisel tip just to blend it out better. And doing the other side, just using my brush nib to get it wet, and then I'll go back with my chisel tip. And you can see I didn't go all the way down to the bottom. I'm blending it into the white. So I'm actually just a little bit short or shy of going all the way down, because I'm blending that 𝐂𝐳𝐴 into the white so it reads the white. Okay, so now we also need to do some of the details on his little outfit. And we're not going crazy with coloring on his outfit. We're just hitting it up because his outfit is white. So we are just going to add a little bit to the stripes area like we did before with the teal. And I'm just adding a little bit of color to those stripes now. And I'm not even going all the way through the whole entire stripe. I'm just adding a really thin line on the right-hand side of that C3, and then I'm blending out the C3 with the 𝐂𝐳𝐴, but I'm not going all the way to the edge. So it's kind of like how we did the underside of that headdress. I'm blending it into the white area, but without actually coloring all of the area in. So it's going into white, like so. And then for the pleaty areas of his dress skirt here, we are just going down and tracing the lines that are already drawn there with our C3, and then just going to be blending them out to give some shadows into those folds. Just to give a hint of color, so there's some shading and some depth on there. And just hitting those dark areas where we think the shade would be, which would be underneath that tie and on those pleats. And then for his bodice area, it would be underneath his collar and down the side, and then we're just going to blend that out. And again, this is just so to give a hint of color on white without leaving it completely white. And we're just going to do the one layer so it's a light shade. Now we're going to do the golds, and I love doing golds. Golds are fun. And golds start with a brown and then go into a nice yellow. So we're going to start with laying down our darkest area with our E here, and we are going to our E25, and we're just going to go down the sides of the little jewelry area. And then we're going in with our Y19, and you start blending it out. And the Y19 on the E25 blends really, really nicely, and it starts to pick out a rich gold type color. And then you hit it with a really light yellow on the end to feather it out even more. And it will read as gold. It's quite fun. So you're just going to go ahead to richen it a little bit more. So that E25. and then that 𝐲19, and then our lightest is a 𝐲21. It's hard to read because it's just the rim, but we're going to do more gold. So we're also going to do gold on the band here. So we are going to lay down that 𝐒25 across the top of the band. And then we're also going to come in from the sides and start feathering in some of this brown. And we're going to repeat the same thing on the opposite side of the band, again with that 𝐒25. Then we're going to go in with our 𝐲19 and start blending out on top of the color we already laid down. And you can see it's starting to go into like a goldy color. And then our lightest color, we're just gonna blend everything more. So our band reads shadows on the side with the lighter part of the highlight hitting towards that center. And my marker's starting to run out. So I'm just gonna grab another light yellow just so I can finish this up and get a nice golden color. And there is how you do a really cute variation on a gold. Okay, now so we're going to do the jewel really quick, and we're going to use some yellow reds in here. And so we have our 𝐲𝐻09, 𝐲𝐻68, and then our 𝐲𝐻15, and we're just making our cute little gem in the center of the headband here, headdress. And then we're just going to do it one more time to darken everything up. So the 𝐲𝐻09, 𝐲𝐻68, and then finally our 𝐲𝐻15. And now you have a cute little jewel on his headdress as well. Okay, so now we're going to go back to add more gold. We're going to do his little waistband of his belt. So that 𝐒25 going around on his belt area. And then our 𝐲19. And then I would have had my 𝐲21, but I had to switch to my 𝐲11. But it's a small enough area that it will be okay because it'll still read as the gold. And now we're going to do his collar area. Oh. And we are going to, on the sides, with that 𝐒25, and start feathering it in a small amount. And then on the side of the other shoulder, feathering it in towards the center, a small amount. And then we're going to take that 𝐤19 and go over that 𝐒25 so it starts melding together with the two colors and extending it further towards the center. And then our 𝐒11, again, I would be using my 𝐒21, but it ran out. And then just filling in the rest of this area and blending it for a nice smooth blend. The 𝐒21 is a better choice, so if you have your 𝐒21, I would have stuck with that. Obviously, if mine, I have to refill it, but you have to make do with what happens when you're coloring, and sometimes your markers run out. Okay, so I'm going to go back with my 𝐒25. I'm doing the back part of his neck right there, the darkest, and then the jewel collar around the top of his neck. And now I'm going to go in and do the little second layer. And I'm going to feather my 𝐤19 out further this time because that 𝐤11 was a little bit too yellow for me. So I'm just trying to color adjust it as best as I can since I have to use this other marker. And that is to get rid of that bright, bright yellow. So it reads gold. And that is our little dude with his little gold headdress and his collar. And then we just need to quickly do some of his sandals, which are super, super tiny. And we're just going to use our 𝐒35 and put in some little shading. And then our 𝐒33, blending that out. And then our 𝐒31. For his little sandals. And these literally are just lines because they're very, very thin, the drawing of his sandals. So it's not even coloring. It's laying down a line and then going over the previous area with your next color, basically. Just blending and smoothing. Okay, and now all that is left to do is his little tongue area on his mouth. And I'm just going to be using R05 to lay down that first layer of the red in his mouth, and then hitting up a little shadow area with R56. And then just blending the two together once again with that R05. And now our little guy is all colored and complete. And we can go ahead and start on the card. Okay, so for the card, we're going to need a piece of watercolor paper, 7.5 by 3.5, 7.5 by 2, and then 2 pieces that are 3 by 1, and you're going to score them at the 1-inch mark and then at the 1.5-inch mark. I'm using watercolor paper because I'm going to be ink blending with a lot of ink, and watercolor paper holds the ink really, really well, so you get a nice blend. I'm also going to be cutting out our matte die, our squiggle matte die, my pyramid builder dies, and then I'm going to be using from my Land of Oz set, the cloud and the hill die. And again, I'm going to be cutting all of those pieces also out from watercolor paper. Now for the cloud die and the hill die, what I need to keep into consideration is that it's 2 inches high. Okay, so I want to make sure when I cut into the side part, it stays at that 2-inch mark, because those are going to be the legs right there. So if I know that the height of the leg is the 1 inch, I just want to, before I die cut into my piece here, I just want to make a little bit of a mark so I know how far down I can go on my die cut top that I'm going to make. So I need the height of this to be no higher than 1 inch. So I'm just marking where that's going to be on both sides of my paper. Now I know that when I take my hill, I know how far down into the sides I can go, so my little tab will still be covered. And then on my larger piece, I'm going to be using this cloud cutout die. So I just, I'm going to be doing a repeat die cut on there. So I went ahead and now I am going to have all my pieces cut out, as you can see, with my watercolor paper. I have my hill die, I have my pyramid dies, and I have my squiggle wiggles and my little sun. So we're going to start ink blending. And I'm just going to grab some of my hybrid inks. So I am going to be using our ink in Tangerine and also in Aspen Gold. Just set those off to the side here. And I'm going to grab my brushes and I'm just going to start ink blending my watercolor dyed pieces. So I'm grabbing some of that, my yellow ink, and I'm just coming off the side of the edge, blending towards the center of my squiggle mat. And I'm not putting down a lot of pressure. You can see I'm holding my brush on the handle. When I want it to get a little bit darker when I'm applying, I'll put my finger either on the neck of the brush or where that yellow dot is to apply more pressure. But here I'm just lightly adding. So I'm holding it loosely down at the bottom of my handle. And then I'm going to go in with my tangerine orange, and I just want to hit the edges of my page. Again, very lightly, just hitting those very outer edges with the orange, just to give it a very cool sunbursty type of effect for what will be behind my little Egyptian guy. And now we're going to do the same colors also on our little sun. So I'm just going to ink blend again in the yellow, which is our Aspen Gold. And you can be using any inks that you have. This is a hybrid ink, which is a cross between pigment and dye ink, and it just works without you having to think what kind of ink you need for your project, because it is a hybrid of the two. But if you have distressed inks or anything like that, those would also work really well on your paper. And again, the watercolor paper is what we use when we're doing a lot of ink blending, because it is meant to hold water for watercoloring, and the ink really saturates the paper here. So we just like to use that as opposed to regular thick cardstock. And again, I'm just hitting up those edges with that tangerine color to get a cute little vibrant sun. Okay, so we're going to put those aside. And we're going to grab our next sets of inks that we're going to use for our next ink blending. And we're going to do our cloud section now. Now I already die cut the top of my card, but what I also did is I also ran it through again on a spare sheet of paper, because I'm going to use that as my stencil. So I'm going to go get our next ink, which is our blue Clear Skies. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this stencil in various places on my bottom piece so that I can get variations of the clouds coming in and giving a really nice texture to it. And so if you have dies, you can actually use them kind of as a stencil idea by simply cutting it out on another sheet of paper and then using it as I'm doing, and just laying down these layers. And again, I'm using it lightly. Okay, now I'm going to reverse it so my clouds don't all line up exactly the same way each time. And I'm just overlapping it in areas and then going in with another layer by moving it down. And you do not want the ink to be the exact same tone as what you just left down in your last layer, because this is what's going to give it the variation of the different clouds. And I'm just adding that in now. And you just repeat this by keep moving that stenciled piece down and flipping it over, and then making sure it doesn't always line up exactly, so you're getting different cloud tops in different areas of your paper. Because if you just move the page down each and every time, all your clouds would line up, and we all know clouds do not line up. So we just like to move this stencil around, use different parts of it in different areas, just to create the different look. And I love the technique because I feel it's almost like if you were doing a tie-dye shirt and you don't always know how it's going to look until the very end of the reveal. And that's always really kind of exciting because you never know what you're going to get, and you're never going to repeat it the same way twice. It's really, really a fun little technique. You can also add multiple colors to your clouds, so you get, because you know the sky isn't just one color. Sometimes there's hints of purples in the sky and pinks in the sky, and of course at sunrise and sunset you get your yellows and your oranges. So it's also a lot of fun sometimes to add those other colors to the very, very tips in a very light layer to the outer parts of your cloud. But this is just a quick, fun technique to get a cute background onto card. Now again, using different pressure on our ink to get these different shades of, we're only using one color ink at this time, but as you can see, we're getting lots of different variations in the blues because of the pressure that we're using and going lighter in some areas and darker in other. And then we're just going to do one more little section here at the bottom. And then we're nearly done with our pretty blue sky. And then we're just going to fill in really lightly the leftover bottom with a very light touch of the blue, like so. And now you can see all the variations of our beautiful clouds up in the sky, all used with the same exact die cut that we made into a stencil. All right, so I'm going to put that aside for a moment, and now we are going to do our pyramid and our sand pieces. And for that, we are going to be using a couple of colors. We're going to be using birch, moonrock, and pecan, or birch, pecan, and then moonrock. So 2 shades of brown, a really light shade, and then a dark shade of brown, and then a gray. So we are going to grab our pyramid pieces, and we're going to first put down our birch ink. And this is like a sand color, pale beige, which is perfect also for no line coloring. If you stamp your image in this ink, you'll have a really great no line coloring image. So we're just going to apply this in as much of an even tone as we can on all of our pyramid pieces. This is just going to be our base color. So we just want to get it as much coverage on here as we can. And now our last triangle piece. And now we're going to do our sand of our hills. We're just, again, putting as much coverage on here because we are going to add those other ink colors on there to build up a little scene with some shading. So we just need to put down that base ink. It doesn't even need to be necessarily a very, very smooth blend because this is going to be representing sand. So sand does have a lot of texture in it with hills in it. So you don't even have to worry if you're not the best blender, if you get some blotchy areas on here. And a lot of it gets covered up anyways with your next 2 layers. And it's the same thing though here. The more layers you add, the richer the color will be and the smoother the blend, just like with your Copic markers. Okay, so those are our light colored. Now we're going to go into our pecan color, and I am just going to be hitting up the one side of these pyramids with this darker color. I guess I decided to add it on the other side too. Sorry about that. Okay. And then we're going to go ahead and repeat it on our other pyramids as well. And again, this is a much darker brown, so I'm very, very lightly applying it because I don't want it to be like super, super dark. I just want it to have more texture added to these pieces. So we're just adding that on. And then this is the piece that goes underneath the pyramids. So we want those cutouts to show through in the dark brown. So now you can see I'm adding a much heavier hand and getting the darker brown. And I'm just quickly hitting where I need the dark brown to be because I want it to show through those little cutouts on our top layer, like so. And then we also have this little strip that covers the bottom of our pyramid, so I'm just going to also put that down in the dark browns, like so. And now I'm going to add the color to our base piece here. So again, I'm back to using a lighter pressure, and I'm just hitting on top of the hill and then on the sides. Not really going all the way towards that center, but I'm really just trying to darken the edges more. So that will give that shadowy area where it needs to, and then going across the bottom just a little bit, just so it all ties in nicely. But you can see I left some lighter areas in the center of the plain of the desert here. And now we're going to go and grab that moon rock, which is a gray coloring ink. And this I like because it just tones everything down and gives it a nice earthy feel. So I'm just hitting different areas of this as well, and it gives a really nice tone on those other colors. And now I'm just going to repeat it on the other pyramids. Again, it's just to help tone it down and darken it up a little bit more. Still leaving the birch color, the lightest brown, in the centers of the pyramids to represent the light hitting on them. But it's a lot of fun to add more than one color when you're doing your ink blending to really get it to take on a new life of its own, basically, and give a lot of texture, and just makes the appearance look completely different when you add multiple layers. And when the colors work really well together, you get some really, really nice variations in your project. Okay, and now this last piece here, again, I'm just going to be going over some of the edges, and this is going to create a look of, you know, the dips in sand, and, you know, just tone it down to make it look more deserty. And when you add color on top of another color, it just really can change the value. Obviously, it's going to change the hue of the color, but your saturation is going to get down as well. And it just brings a whole new life to your project again, like I already stated. And I'm just going to be hitting up different areas. And now you can see it's got, you know, more depth to it because of the colors added. Okay, so now we are done with our ink blending. Okay, so now we're going to assemble our pyramids onto the base of our pyramid piece, like so. Just flip this over so I'm out of the ink way. So I'm just going to take some liquid glue, which, hold on, lost my pin from my glue. Okay, there we go. Now we got some glue coming. Okay, we're just going to glue these down in place on our base of our pyramid here. And now hopefully you can see more of the variation with that ink blending on those pyramids, how you got nice shading in there. I'm just gonna line that up. It just creates a really great little scene here for you. And now we're putting down our second little pyramid. Like so. And liquid glue is amazing because it gives you that wiggle room. And there's our next pyramid where we're going to put. And I am actually going to top dot that third pyramid, just because this whole entire card I want to be three-dimensional. So I even want the pieces that are going to be in the background to have some dimension as well. So it's just not my front layer that's popping, but I even have a piece in the back that will pop as well. So we're just putting down some foam dots. I'm trying not to cover out those cut windows. Just trying to cover as much of the surface as possible so I can get it to adhere really, really well to that back piece. Like so. And now we're going to go ahead, trim this one piece was covering. There we go. So remove our backing pieces. And we're going to go ahead and pop dot that right towards the center. So now even our pyramids have a little bit of a 3D action going on in the background, like so. And now we're going to take our strip, and I should have glued this down first before pop dotting. But that piece just goes across the bottom like so. But since it's popped out, I can actually just slide that underneath. So that worked out to my favor. So we're just gonna go and glue this little strip right down on the piece here. Just gonna hold that in so I can make sure that's going under my other side. There we go. And then again, we got that little bit of wiggle room to go ahead and position our strip where we need it to be, like so. And there we go. And now I'm just gonna make sure I can adhere it. Okay, so there is our pyramid piece. Okay, just gonna put a clean sheet down here. For our sky here, we are going to start planning out where everything's going to be so we can kind of get a visual on where we want our pieces to go. Just so you can sort of start planning where you want your pieces. So we are going to first position that bottom piece because we know that's going to be a pop out, so we can kind of figure out where those pyramids need to lay. So I'm just going to remove that so I can glue down the pyramids in our background. Again, just positioning it so that I have the pyramids peeking out from the sand dune, so they're further in the distance, like so. And now I can go ahead and put those down. Okay, so now we're going to grab let's see, we're going to get, this is our normal standard card that we use, and I just wanted to make sure it was going to fit in there, but ultimately my card is going to be larger than a regular slimline. Okay, so I'm really just trying to get the feel and the layout of where I want everything to go. This is just a natural process when you are making projects. And I didn't want to cover all the pyramids, so I am ultimately going to have some parts hanging off the side of my card. So now my card is going to be larger than I originally wanted, but I want the pyramids to show, so that's a small price to pay. So I'm just going to turn this over and make a little marking so I know where I'm going to be putting my glue down. And I'm going to go ahead and add that glue at this time. And then position this piece back into place. And this is just I just wing my cards. I never know what's going to happen. I have in my head one way, and then when I start laying it out, sometimes everything changes, and that is okay. All right, so now you have those two little pieces that were the 3" by 1". and you're going to score it at the marks I said, I believe 1.5 inch and 1.5 inch. And you're going to have a leg, one shorter side and one longer side. And that shorter side is what's going to get glued into the corner of your card, and then the longer side is going to go on the top. So we're going to go ahead and take that smaller tabbed area, and we're going to just line it up into the corner, and we're going to flush it on the bottom and the side of our bottom base piece. And just make sure it's flushed. And then you're going to repeat it on the other side. And I actually lost my other piece, so I have to quickly go and cut another one, and I do that for you guys off camera really quick. Or I guess I didn't do it off camera. See, this is what happens when you shoot your video and days later you go ahead and do your voiceover. You forget what you did. All right, so I am cutting it down the 3 inch by 1 inch, getting that little tab area, and then I'm going to be scoring it at the 1.5 inch mark, and then at the 1/2 inch mark. So there is my scores. And now we can go ahead and get that second tab set up. So just going there again, your short side is what you're going to glue to the bottom edge and side of your front of your card. And mine's overlapping on the pyramid, so I'm going to have a little bit of a second layer popping through there. I could have trimmed it down, but I just didn't. And we're just going to go ahead and glue this again into the bottom side of this part of your base. And I'm just going to press it in really well because I do have that little bit of extra bulk from where that pyramid piece is. So I'm just going to make sure I adhere it really well. And so now what you'll have, it'll look like two little legs coming out the front of your card, like so. And then this is going to attach to the tops of them. Okay, so I'm going to grab some more glue. And then I'm going to take the front part and have that flush to it as well. And just make sure that is adhered. And then I'm going to repeat it on my other tab on the other side. Just lining up the sides and the bottom like so. And you can actually fold it a little bit over so that you can put the pressure on for it to line up. And it should line up just perfectly. Like so. And now you have like a false bridge in the front of your card for the dimension, and when it folds over, it'll be flat to fit into a card envelope. And now we're going to just go ahead and put some glue for our sun. Just tuck that like so onto the back. And then we have this little tag, and I made them in 2 different sizes because I wasn't sure if I wanted the longer piece or the shorter piece. So just to give the card balance, I think we're going to go with the longer one. So our little guy is going to go there. I'm just going to glue his feet, his legs, where it's on the sand dune, because the top of him is going to be hanging over on the 3-dimensional part. And you can't pop dot it because then when you fold the card, he would shift. So we can only glue his bottom legs at this time, like so. And then again, I was still deciding if I liked the longer one or the shorter one. I just think the shorter one didn't give as much balance to my card. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just pop dot my sentiment, like so. And I'm going to go ahead and add that to the front of my card. And there's your little popped up 3D shadow box styled slimline card. I did realize the center of my card, it bowed a little bit as well. So what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to create one more leg like we did on the side pieces, because see how it makes a U shape? It's not really stable in the center. So I made one extra leg that I'm going to go ahead and ultimately glue into the center to give it a little bit more stability. And this is where on these little tab areas, you really want to use your really sturdy cardstock, or if you have chipboard, that would be even better because it will really, really help strengthen your card. I'm just lining it up to the bottoms, and I'm just gluing in, and it's also going to have that little bit of a bend to it, so it will help by using the same dimensions that we used on our other legs. It will fold flat when it goes in the card, and then it will pop when you open it. So you don't have to worry about that third leg not working either. And now we have our third leg in the center, and now it's not bowed out, and it's more stable. And there is our cute little 3D project, and here it is completed. And I really hope that you enjoyed this project with me. Again, it's like a shadow box pop-up slimline card. Thank you for joining me. Have a great day. Bye.